Hi everyone. Thank you all for checking out my Ask the Admin video where I answered your questions and said some of my own theories. Recently I decided that I was going to go back and watch the 5 episodes that Marlene King said that would be very important to rewatch. The first one I rewatched was 301, which is titled That Happened That Night. And some of the clues that I picked up on were um, Ezra made a comment about the anniversary of Allison's disappearance and said that it was like a new memory. It's because, Arya and Ezra got together then. And he reminded us of the bathroom when him and Arya first made out, which I thought was kind of interesting because in spoilers, I kind of read that this might be a little bit relevant. I won't spoil anything now, but if you want to know more, you can ask me. Um, Also, I thought it was interesting that Spencer kept getting a blocked call. She was telling everyone it was Toby, which the whole time I'm like, wow, Toby must be A. But then later on, I realized with some of the help of my admins, special shout out to Trisha, she was actually getting calls from Garrett. Garrett was calling her from prison. Um, I also find it really interesting that Jenna and Noel took Emily because Emily after gets a text saying, I bet you remember me or something along those lines, which kind of makes me really suspicious about Jenna and Noel. Um, Hannah finally admits to visiting Mona in this episode. In A's lair that is no longer there, there are flashbacks of when the girls were in there, and the dollhouse was still there, the mini dollhouse with the 4 girls and then Allie on top, which I thought was kind of telling that Uber A or Big A was kind of in the picture before we even thought they were in the picture. The zombie costume was also in there, which takes me back to the first season where they're at the Halloween party and the person in the zombie costume pretends to hurt Allie. And outside of the house, there's that Radley Sanatorium um, van, which makes me realize that Charles was in fact at Radley. There's the connection. So I'm assuming that Charles wore that zombie costume. A is definitely framing the girls. I mean, it is so obvious by putting everything in their car, the pictures of them at Allie's gravesite. All the stuff in the layer going missing, obviously they're being transferred. But something that stuck out to me was Spencer mentioned that everything was gone, including the diaries. And ironically, those diaries end up in Ezra's layer later on. Hmm, interesting. Is Ezra Charles? I think he is. Um, and then the last A message at the end, the text was Mona played with dolls, I play with body parts. So this is kind of like a foreshadowing of what's to happen. Like Mona had them, Mona played with the dolls, but now A is actually using the girls and targeting the girls. So, I mean, I think that's all very interesting. That's only episode 301. I have 4 more episodes to go. I'll let you know what I find. Hey everyone, and welcome to part 2 of the 5 episode watch. Today I'm going to go over the second episode on Marlene's list, which is episode 24 of season 3, which is the actual finale. The title of this episode was A Dangerous Game. Some things that I picked up are Spencer joined the A team, which kind of strikes me as interesting. Not because of the fact that she joined the A team, but because of the fact that it seemed like A wanted her to join the A team, and the fact that Mona had insisted that she join the A team in the first time around, which kind of makes me think that Charles must be related to Spencer, and he kind of wants to get to know her or kind of expose her to the idea that Jason in fact had a twin, so she has 2 brothers. Um, she also said we lost Toby but didn't know it. It kind of makes me think that they're symbolizing that Spencer lost somebody else in her life but never realized it, probably because she didn't know him. Um, I also thought it was very interesting that they were having tea and crumpets. It kind of felt like a foreshadowing of what happened in the PLL finale that we just saw on Tuesday. Um, Ezra is nowhere to ever be found when things are going down, which I think is so telling. I mean, how obvious is it that Ezra obviously is creepy? I mean, that's just me. I think he's guilty. Um, Toby is clearly Pretty Eyes, though, which kind of confuses me because we're led to think that, Pretty Eyes is A, but we realize that Toby can't be A right now. I mean, at least in my opinion. So Toby has pretty eyes, but maybe that server calls everyone with pretty eyes pretty eyes. That's the only thing I can think of. Um, let's see. Toby was knocked out at the lodge fire, and I think it's because he is literally trying to protect the girls, and somebody caught on to that. And they're like, well, we need to knock out Toby because otherwise he's going to be helping the girls. Um, Also, this totally made me realize that Ezra is Charles. Ezra was wearing a red tie, and there was cats on it, which remind me of Varjak's paw, which also led me to think that Ezra is in fact aka Charles, and the De Laurentiis sibling. Ezra has a typewriter. A writes on typewriters. Clue enough. Um, Ezra also goes back to teaching at Rosewood in this episode, and the book that they're reading is called A Farewell to Arms, and this struck me as a huge clue. Ezra says, all things wicked start from innocence. Oh my gosh, this is like so telling. This is all about Charles, aka Ezra, in my opinion. If you're not on board, I'm sorry, it's just what I think. Spencer is not in the lodge when the fire goes down, and neither is Allie, which kind of makes me think that A kind of has a soft spot because Spencer and Allie are his sisters. Um, who hit Toby? Who hit Toby? I still want to know who is Toby looking at. It looks like Maya. It might be Jenna. I'm not sure. I can't wait to find out. Who pulled Mona, Arya, and Emily out of the lodge? Because we know that Hannah was pulled out by Allie, and that was confirmed, but Allie had no idea how the other three got out. We need to know. I feel like this information is huge. Mona keeps referring to A as a she, but I think Redcoat is the accomplice of A, and then I think Redcoat eventually turns into Black Widow, Black Veil. I like how A at the end shows the girls that Wilden was alive and that Shauna and Jenna knew him. I felt like this was stuff that we didn't know, and it was important to know it. Right now, my theory is still totally Ezra. I can't get over it. I thought that there was no way it could be Ezra, but now rewatching, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Ezra. I have 3 more episodes to go, and I can't wait to fill you guys in. But by the time you see it, they'll all be together. Have a good day. Hey everyone, I just finished episode 424, which is titled A is for Answers, and it's when we finally see Allie and she's giving us all the clues and basically telling us everything that we've always wanted to know. Some notes that I took while I was watching the episode is Nola's helping Allie. I still don't know why Nola's helping Allie, but I really want to know, especially because Nola was somehow tied to Maya, which is very interesting to me. Also, we learned that, or actually, Mrs. De Laurentiis said never turn your back on a Hastings, which makes me think that Charles actually is a Hastings, which means that he is also Spencer's brother and Melissa's brother, and would have to be Jason's twin. Ezra is also mad in this episode at Allie and says that you lied to me because she lied about a bunch of stuff when she met Ezra. I thought that was kind of interesting because I was still sketchy on Ezra and who he really is. The Mockingbird Cafe that they're at, I feel like it's another huge Mockingbird reference. I really want to know how the book and PLL kind of correlate or relate to each other. I thought it was really interesting that Ezra was reading Tender is the Night when he first met Allie for the first time, and Scott Fitzgerald wrote it. Fitzgerald, like Ezra Fitzgerald, so that stuck out to me. And this book is actually about his wife being a schizophrenic, which kind of made me think like multiple personality disorders and a whole bunch of other things. Also, we learned that Ezra called Allie Holly Golightly, and we found out, at first Allie thinks that it's like a compliment, but then later realizes it's because she's like a big phony, and, Arya brings up the point of saying, Holly Golightly couldn't name her cat because she didn't think she deserved to be loved, and this kind of reminded me of Charles. Like, did he feel like he wasn't loved, or what was happening with that? So at this point, I was still totally on board with Ezra as Charles. keeps going. Um, Ezra said to Allie, see you around. Or, sorry, I retract that statement. Allie said, see you around, and Ezra said, no, you won't. That was kind of like a hint to me that he was going to hurt Allie in some way. Um, Also, Ian told Allie that the flash drive can ruin her family, which I think meant that the whole secret about Charles would get out, and I think that's where that ties in. Um, Ezra finding Shauna and offering to help with Allie kind of made me feel like Ezra was A and really just wants to find Allie because that's his sister. Um, when Cece sees Mrs. D at the police station, they kind of look at each other and you just feel like there's something that you're missing, and I can't figure it out. Um, why didn't Mrs. De Laurentiis tell the police that somebody hit her daughter? Obviously, she was protecting somebody. Who that person is, we don't know. I feel like that is something that we're trying to learn, or we really need to know. Um, Mrs. De Laurentiis kept saying, what have you done, what have you done? And this leads us to believe that she obviously knew the person that hit Allie. She's protecting A, and that's why she's always pointing the finger at Spencer. This wasn't in this episode, but this kind of goes along with my Ezra is Charles theory. Grunwald had said one of you has been touched by A. Obviously, that could have been Arya. Also, a lot of people are saying that Charles is actually a female because of the wigs and stuff in the lair, but from rewatching all these episodes, you learn that the wig and all the pictures of Allie originally started with Mona, so I don't think that necessarily you can say that it's because Charles put it there just because it started with Mona and A stole that layer from Mona. Also, this is backtracking, but we learned that Grunwald says that they both fear each other, and this is in season 5. I think Mona knew about Charles but didn't know who Charles was, and that is why, that is her secret against Allie. But what secret does Allie have about Mona? That's something that we still haven't realized. Now, regarding this actual episode, how did Ezra know where the girls are? This has been driving me crazy. He shows up in Philadelphia all of a sudden. We have no idea how he knew that's where the girls were. And ironically, A is there and A shoots Ezra. Now, at this point, I was thinking to myself, there is no way that Ezra could be A because he just shot himself. But then I was thinking, when Ezra goes into the hospital, he says it was Shauna, so I think that Shauna possibly was Ezra's shooter. One thing that is confusing me, and I don't know if it's a flash forward or a flash back because PLL does it a lot, but at the end we see that A was dragging Mrs. De Laurentiis out along the ground. So if A was really with Mrs. D, then how was A also with Ezra and the girls? So at this point I feel like there was more than one A kind of helping. I kind of feel like one of them was Cece Drake. She was released. I kind of feel like Cece was the one that might have hit Mrs. De Laurentiis, but this whole time we were told that, you know, Charles was the one that hit both Allie and Mrs. D, but now I'm really not sure. I think it is possible, though, that Cece hit both that Cece hit both Allie and Mrs. De Laurentiis, and Mrs. De Laurentiis was protecting her because possibly Cece and Bethany are the twins. I don't know for sure, just a thought. And who killed Ian? We know it wasn't Mona. And who took the girls out of the fire? These are still questions that haven't been answered. If anyone has any thoughts on how Ezra is in one place and A's in another, because all of us Ezra's A believers, please help me out because I'm honestly so confused right now. I have no idea what to believe because I'm totally on board the Ezra train, but right now I'm not sure. Toby wasn't in this episode, so I don't know. I know he's not A. I don't feel like he's A. He's helping too much. But Ezra's still like a suspect to me, but I'm not really sure what to believe. So what are your thoughts? Let me know. Hey liars, let me know your theories by commenting on the thread below or commenting on our YouTube page. Remember, if you don't follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at FBPLL Fans. If you're not following us on Instagram, it's FBPLL Fans. And make sure you're following us on Facebook. Our group is Pretty Little Liars Fans. Thank you. Have a great day.